Syria. The name itself echoes through the corridors of history. For millennia, this land has been a stage for human drama on an epic scale. It is a place where empires have clashed, where faiths have been born, and where cultures have mingled and merged. To understand Syria is to understand the very currents of world history. Its strategic position has always been its blessing and its curse. Situated at the eastern edge of the Mediterranean Sea, it forms a natural land bridge connecting three continents: Asia, Africa, and Europe. This unique geography has made it an unavoidable crossroads for trade, migration, and, most consequentially, for armies on the march. Whoever controlled Syria controlled the vital arteries of commerce and communication between the East and the West. This geographical imperative has been a constant throughout Syria's long and often painful story. It was a prize coveted by the pharaohs of Egypt and the kings of Mesopotamia. Later, it became a battleground for the Romans and the Persians, then for the Crusaders and the Saracens. In more modern times, it was a focal point for Ottoman sultans, European colonial powers, and Cold War superpowers. Each saw Syria not just as a territory to be conquered, but as a critical piece in a much larger geopolitical puzzle. Controlling its ports, its trade routes, and its fertile river valleys meant projecting power across the entire region. This relentless external pressure has profoundly shaped the Syrian identity, forging a people who are at once resilient, proud, and tragically accustomed to conflict. The very soil of Syria is layered with the remnants of these struggles. Walk through its ancient cities and you are walking through history itself. You can find cuneiform tablets from forgotten Bronze Age kingdoms, see the grand colonnades of Roman cities, and stand in the courtyards of magnificent mosques from the early days of Islam. You can touch the stone of Crusader castles and wander through the souks of Ottoman trading hubs. This incredible density of historical legacy is a testament to Syria's enduring importance. It has never been a peripheral player left on the sidelines of history. Instead, it has consistently been at the very heart of the action, a place where the great powers of the day came to test their strength and assert their dominance. Even today, as we look at the devastating conflict that has engulfed the nation in the 21st century, we are seeing a modern echo of these ancient rivalries. The struggle for Syria is once again a proxy war, a battlefield where regional and global powers compete for influence. The players have changed, but the fundamental strategic importance of the land remains the same. Understanding this deep history is absolutely essential if we are to grasp the complexities of the current crisis. The story of Syria is not just a local one, it is a global one. It is the story of a land that has always been fought over, a land that has absorbed the ambitions of empires and has, time and again, paid a heavy price for its own strategic significance. Long before the names of Rome or Greece were ever spoken, Syria was a cradle of urban civilization. The fertile lands watered by the Euphrates and Orontes rivers gave rise to some of the world's earliest and most sophisticated cities. Around 4,500 years ago, powerful city-states like Ebla and Mari flourished here. These were not primitive settlements, they were major centers of power, culture, and commerce. Archaeologists at Ebla, in modern-day northern Syria, unearthed a magnificent royal archive containing over 17,000 cuneiform tablets. These clay records reveal a thriving kingdom with a complex bureaucracy, extensive trade networks reaching as far as Afghanistan and Egypt, and a rich literary tradition. They tell of kings, treaties, and a bustling economy built on textiles and agriculture. The city of Mari, situated on the banks of the Euphrates, was another jewel of this early Syrian civilization. Its palace was a wonder of the ancient world, a sprawling complex of over 300 rooms decorated with vibrant frescoes depicting scenes of royal life and religious ceremony. Mari was a key hub on the trade routes that linked Mesopotamia to the Mediterranean, growing wealthy from the traffic of timber, metals, and precious stones. But the prosperity of these Syrian kingdoms made them an irresistible target for more powerful, expansionist neighbors. The fertile ground that nurtured their growth also attracted the attention of conquerors. The Akkadians, under the legendary Sargon the Great, swept in from the south, establishing one of history's first empires and bringing cities like Mari under their control. This set a pattern that would be repeated for centuries. Syria became a perpetual battleground for the great powers of the ancient Near East. Following the Akkadians came the Amorites, who established their own dynasties in the region. Then came the mighty Hittite Empire, expanding from Anatolia in the north. The Hittites famously clashed with the Egyptian New Kingdom under Pharaoh Ramesses II. Their epic struggle for control of Syria culminated in the Battle of Kadesh in 1274 BC, one of the largest chariot battles ever fought. Although both sides claimed victory, the conflict ultimately ended in the world's first known international peace treaty, a testament to how vital control of Syria was to both empires. The cycle of conquest continued relentlessly. After the Bronze Age collapse weakened the Hittites and Egyptians, new powers rose to fill the vacuum. The formidable Assyrian war machine, known for its brutal efficiency, subjugated Syria, incorporating it into its vast empire. The Assyrians were followed by the Neo-Babylonians, under kings like Nebuchadnezzar II, who also marched their armies across Syrian lands. Then came the Persians, under Cyrus the Great, who created an even larger empire stretching from India to Greece. For the people living in Syria, this meant a constant succession of foreign rulers, new languages, and different gods. Their land was a province to be administered, a source of taxes and soldiers, and a buffer zone between warring empires. In 64 BC, the Roman general Pompey the Great marched his legions into Syria, annexing it as a province of the burgeoning Roman Empire. This marked the beginning of a new era of stability and immense prosperity. For the next 7 centuries, under Roman and later Byzantine rule, Syria became one of the wealthiest and most important regions of the empire. The Romans understood its strategic value, making it a heavily militarized frontier against their great rivals to the east, the Parthian and later the Sasanian Persian empires. Roman legions were permanently stationed here, and great fortress cities were built to secure the border. But Roman rule was about more than just military might. It was about integration and engineering. The Romans built roads, aqueducts, theaters, and temples on a grand scale. Cities like Antioch on the Orontes River became the 3rd largest city in the empire, surpassed only by Rome and Alexandria. It was a cosmopolitan hub of trade, philosophy, and Roman administration for the entire East. Damascus, already an ancient city, continued to thrive as a vital caravan stop. Palmyra, the bride of the desert, grew fabulously wealthy by controlling the trade routes that crossed the Syrian desert. Its magnificent colonnaded streets and monumental temples, a stunning fusion of Greco-Roman and local Semitic styles. The remains of these cities, the so-called dead cities of northern Syria, still stand today as silent witnesses to an age of incredible wealth and architectural achievement. Syria also played a pivotal role in the history of religion. It was in the Roman province of Syria that Christianity took root and began its transformation from a small Jewish sect into a world religion. The city of Antioch became a crucial early center for the faith. It was here, according to the Acts of the Apostles, that the followers of Jesus were first called Christians. The Apostle Paul began his missionary journeys from Antioch, spreading the new faith throughout the Roman world. Syria became a heartland of Christian thought, theology, and monasticism. Great theologians debated the nature of Christ, and devout ascetics like Saint Simeon Stylites sought God by living for decades atop pillars, inspiring thousands of pilgrims. When the Roman Empire split, Syria became part of the Eastern Roman or Byzantine Empire, with its capital at Constantinople. Its importance did not diminish. It remained a vital center of commerce, a key agricultural producer, and a religious heartland. Churches and monasteries proliferated, and Syrian artisans became famous for their exquisite mosaics and metalwork. However, the old rivalries continued. The Byzantines fought exhausting wars against the Sasanian Persians, with Syria often serving as the main theater of conflict. These endless wars weakened both empires, leaving them vulnerable. In the 7th century, a new unifying force would emerge from the deserts of Arabia, one that would once again change the destiny of Syria forever. In the 630s AD, Arab armies, united by the new faith of Islam, swept out of the Arabian Peninsula. They swiftly conquered Byzantine Syria, a victory symbolized by the capture of Damascus in 636. This was a monumental turning point in Syrian and world history. The region, which had been shaped by Greco-Roman and Christian traditions for centuries, was now brought into the fold of the rapidly expanding Islamic world. For the people of Syria, this meant a new ruling elite, a new official language in Arabic, and a new dominant religion. However, the early Islamic rulers were often pragmatic. allowing Christians and Jews to continue practicing their faiths as protected communities, or dhimmis, upon payment of a special tax. The true golden age for Syria in this period began in 661 with the rise of the Umayyad Caliphate. The Umayyads moved the capital of the vast Islamic Empire from Medina to Damascus, transforming the ancient Syrian city into the political and cultural center of a domain that stretched from Spain to India. Damascus became a city of unprecedented power and prestige. The Umayyad caliphs were patrons of the arts and sciences, commissioning magnificent works of architecture. The most iconic of these is the Great Mosque of Damascus, built on the site of a Christian cathedral, which itself had been built on the site of a Roman temple to Jupiter. The mosque's stunning mosaics, blending Byzantine techniques with Islamic themes, symbolize the cultural fusion that defined Umayyad Syria. Under Umayyad patronage, Syria became a crucible of intellectual activity. Scholars in Damascus and other Syrian cities played a crucial role in translating the great works of Greek science, medicine, and philosophy into Arabic. This act of preservation and transmission was of immense importance. They absorbed knowledge from Persian and Indian sources as well, creating a synthesis that would lay the groundwork for the Islamic Golden Age. Thinkers and scientists in Syria made significant advances in fields like medicine, astronomy, mathematics, and chemistry. This intellectual ferment, which began in Syria, would later shift to Baghdad under the Abbasid Caliphate. But its Syrian origins were fundamental to the flourishing of knowledge that would eventually find its way back to Europe and help spark the Renaissance. The Umayyad dynasty ruled from Damascus for nearly a century, an era that firmly embedded Syria's identity within the Arab and Islamic world. Although the capital was eventually moved to Baghdad by the succeeding Abbasid dynasty in 750, Syria remained an important and often rebellious province. It was later ruled by a succession of dynasties, including the Tulunids, the Fatimids, and the Seljuk Turks. Then came the era of the Crusades, when European knights established coastal states, and Syrian rulers like the Great Saladin rose to fame leading the Muslim resistance. Through all these changes, the cultural and religious legacy of the Umayyad period endured, cementing Syria's place as a heartland of Arab culture and Islamic civilization. In 1516, the Ottoman Sultan Selim I defeated the Mamluks at the Battle of Marj Debik, just north of Aleppo. This victory brought Syria under the control of the Ottoman Empire, a vast and powerful state centered in Istanbul. For the next 400 years, Syria would be a province of this empire. The Ottoman centuries were a period of relative stability and administrative consolidation. The Ottomans divided the region into administrative districts or vilayets, with governors appointed from the capital. Cities like Aleppo and Damascus flourished once again as major centers of the caravan trade, linking the Persian and Indian trade routes with the Mediterranean and Europe. Grand souks or markets, khans or caravanserais and mosques were built, many of which still define the historic cores of these cities today. Life under the Ottomans was organized around the millet system, which allowed different religious communities, Sunni Muslims, Alawites, Christians of various denominations, Druze and Jews, a degree of autonomy to manage their own affairs, such as education, law, and personal status. This system preserved the region's diverse mosaic of faiths and ethnicities, but also reinforced communal identities, which would have significant consequences later on. For much of this period, Syria was a relatively quiet part of the empire. However, by the 19th century, the Ottoman Empire was in decline, labeled the sick man of Europe. As its central authority weakened, European powers, particularly France and Britain, began to exert increasing economic and political influence in the region, often by positioning themselves as protectors of minority groups. The final collapse of the Ottoman Empire came with its defeat in the First World War. During the war, Britain encouraged an Arab revolt against the Ottomans, promising the Arabs an independent state in return for their help. Figures like T.E. Lawrence or Lawrence of Arabia became famous for their role in this campaign. However, at the very same time, Britain and France were secretly carving up the Ottoman territories for themselves. In 1916, they signed the Sykes-Picot Agreement, a secret pact that drew lines on a map, dividing the Middle East into British and French spheres of influence. Syria was allocated to France, a decision made without any consultation with the people who actually lived there. This act of imperial betrayal has cast a long and dark shadow over the modern history of the Middle East. When the war ended, An Arab kingdom of Syria was briefly declared in Damascus in 1920, but it was quickly crushed by French forces. France established the French Mandate for Syria and the Lebanon, governing the territory on behalf of the League of Nations. They ruled with a firm hand, promoting the French language and culture, and pursuing a strategy of divide and rule by emphasizing sectarian differences and even creating separate statelets for groups like the Alawites and the Druze. This colonial experience fostered deep resentment and fueled a growing sense of Syrian nationalism, uniting people in a shared struggle for independence from foreign control. Syria finally achieved full independence in 1946, after years of nationalist agitation and political struggle against French rule. The last French troops departed, leaving Syrians in control of their own destiny for the first time in centuries. However, the joy of independence was short-lived. The new republic was fragile, born into a region fraught with tension. The legacy of colonial rule had left deep divisions in society, and the country lacked strong, established political institutions. The early years of independence were marked by profound political instability. The period from 1949 to the late 1960s was a chaotic whirlwind of coups and counter-coups as military officers and political factions vied for power. This era of instability was fueled by several factors. The humiliating defeat in the 1948 Arab-Israeli War discredited the traditional political elite and empowered the military. Furthermore, Syria became a battleground for competing ideologies that were sweeping the Arab world, including pan-Arab nationalism, socialism, and political Islam. The Ba'ath Party, with its secular, socialist, and pan-Arab message, gradually grew in influence, particularly within the military officer corps. The party's ideology promised unity, modernization, and a restoration of Arab dignity. In 1963, a Ba'athist-led military coup brought the party to power, an event that would decisively shape Syria's future path and end the chaotic period of parliamentary democracy. Even within the Ba'ath Party, however, power struggles continued. A radical left-wing faction of the party seized control in 1966, further purging its rivals. This internal turmoil was taking place against a backdrop of intense regional conflict. The devastating loss to Israel in the 1967 Six-Day War, during which Syria lost the strategically vital Golan Heights, was a national trauma. It shattered what was left of the country's confidence and created a power vacuum within the regime. This was the moment that a shrewd and ruthless Air Force officer, who was also the Minister of Defense, had been waiting for. His name was Hafez al-Assad, a member of the Alawite minority. In November 1970, Hafez al-Assad seized power in a bloodless internal coup, which he termed the corrective movement. He moved swiftly to consolidate his rule, establishing a highly centralized and authoritarian state built around the military, the security services, the Mukhabarat, and the Ba'ath Party. He created a cult of personality and placed trusted family members and fellow Alawites in key positions of power, ensuring loyalty. While he brought a degree of stability to Syria after decades of chaos, it came at the cost of political freedom. Dissent was ruthlessly crushed. His rule would last for 3 decades, creating a powerful dynasty that would intertwine the fate of the Assad family with the fate of the Syrian nation itself. When Hafez al-Assad died in 2000, the presidency passed to his son, Bashar al-Assad. Initially, there was a flicker of hope for change. A brief period of political openness known as the Damascus Spring saw intellectuals and activists debate reforms. But this window soon slammed shut. The regime's old guard reasserted control, and the security state remained firmly in place. For the next decade, beneath a surface of stability, deep-seated grievances simmered. There was widespread frustration over economic stagnation, endemic corruption, and a lack of political freedom. Sectarian tensions, though officially suppressed, were also a potent undercurrent, with many in the Sunni majority resentful of the dominance of the Alawite minority in the state apparatus. In March 2011, inspired by the Arab Spring uprisings that had toppled dictators in Tunisia and Egypt, a spark ignited in the southern Syrian city of Daraa. A group of teenagers scrawled anti-government graffiti on a wall, and their subsequent arrest and brutal torture by security forces prompted local protests. The regime's response was not concession, but overwhelming force. Security forces opened fire on demonstrators, killing several. This brutality, instead of crushing the dissent, caused it to spread like wildfire. Protests erupted in cities across the country, demanding dignity, freedom, and the fall of the regime. What began as a peaceful uprising quickly spiraled into a vicious and complex civil war. The conflict became a catastrophic free-for-all. The opposition fragmented into a bewildering array of rebel groups, from secular nationalists to hardline Islamist factions. Extremist groups, most notoriously the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, or ISIS, exploited the chaos to seize vast swaths of territory, establishing a brutal caliphate and committing horrific atrocities. The war also became an international proxy conflict. The Assad regime received crucial military and financial support from its allies, Russia and Iran, which was decisive in its survival. On the other side, the United States, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar backed various opposition groups, further fueling the violence. The result was the complete devastation of Syria. The human cost has been staggering. Today, on June 16, 2025, after more than a decade of war, Syria is a shattered nation. Hundreds of thousands have been killed, and more than half of the country's pre-war population has been forced to flee their homes, creating the largest refugee crisis since the Second World War. Ancient cities like Aleppo have been reduced to rubble, the economy is in ruins, and the country is effectively partitioned, with different areas controlled by the government, rebel factions, Turkish-backed forces, and Kurdish groups. While the large-scale fighting has subsided, the future remains profoundly uncertain. The land that empires fought for has truly become a battlefield of its own, leaving its people to navigate the wreckage and dream of a day when peace and rebuilding can finally begin.